I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to the Sal Greco Show. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you're watching us on Rumble, hit the Rumble button, hit the like button. If you're listening on any major podcast streaming platform, please like, share, and subscribe. On this edition of the Sal Greco Show, we're going to have a guest, East Coast meets West Coast. And that's my buddy Marlon, the IA Guy. Here's Marlon on his X account at IA Guy Podcast. You can see he's got great stuff. He has his own show. There is Marlon's YouTube channel at the IA Guy, and you can see all his videos, everything he's covering. Without any further ado, here is Marlon. All right, so as promised on the Sal Greco Show, East Coast meets West Coast. This is my friend Marlon. We call him the IA Guy. Marlon, introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us where you worked, how long you worked out in the West Coast. Tell us your story, Marlon.
Well, you know what? I'm sure that the NYPD and your listeners and your whole audience would love an IA guy. I just happen to be one that that keeps it real for one, right? And I've always been a true believer of transparency. I think you and I had this conversation where, you know what, we are very transparent with the public. We tell them everything there is to know about a critical incidents. Obviously, OIS is being the most popular, and then for whatever reason, it just we're not transparent amongst ourselves. So I always felt that internal affairs, when people get jammed up, when people get in trouble, they start realizing that, you know what, we just don't like talking about it, man. It's a bit taboo when we get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And so I took it upon myself after I retired after 24 years of the Los Angeles Police Department. I spent 15 of those years as a sergeant. And in those 15 years, the majority of my time was in discipline. Is where I got all my experience. I felt that, you know what, let's put it on a social platform and let's go from there. And I apologize for my background here. Normally there's something blurry in the back, but those are my daughter actually bought those curtains, and this room is supposed to be clean and like my office, but I didn't get around to it. So, oh well.
Well, folks here should know, like I stated in the beginning with Marlon, he has his own show and he has a studio. Usually he's in the studio. He's doing this specifically for us because since this is law enforcement based, where we have a big crowd of law enforcement people, Marlon took it upon us to say, no, I'll just do it from the house, because I think it's important that people from the East Coast learn about what goes on the West Coast, because we all know there's a huge scandal in New York City Police Department. We'll get to that. But Marlon's background is literally doing these things that me, John, Eric of the Defiance Unfiltered podcast, Marlon Bethel of Defiance Unfiltered podcast, we're almost like a family and a network in the law enforcement community. And we are talking about issues that are, of corruption. And I thought Marlon, coming from this background, is perfect because he actually sat in many of these, what do you call, interviews, or we call them GOs, which is an interview, department interview. So why don't you just break down a little bit of the procedures of what you had to do? How many levels? Because, with us, I think it's slightly different, but you told me there was 6 levels. And if you ever heard or saw anything political, because I think you had one investigation that you didn't want to do that was political. So go ahead, Marlon.
So, yeah, just a little bit of a background with the Los Angeles Police Department. We're the only agency in the entire nation that has what they call a border rights hearing process. It's basically a civil trial. Apparently, back in the early 60s, the chief at the time was in the Navy. Actually, it happened way before. For whatever reason, when you were brought up on serious allegations of misconduct, whether it's going to be false statements, misleading, perjury, or something that you did off duty, what we call unbecoming conduct or conduct unbecoming an officer, something just so egregious. You know what? The chief of police says, okay, Marlon, Sal, you guys kind of screwed this up and it's super, super bad. These are some serious allegations. I'm going to send you to this hearing. It's a 3-panel member. They are pretty much going to determine your fate, right? However, I recommend removal. I'm just going to have to wait for that 3-panel member to make that decision. That 3-panel member is 2 command staff officers and a civilian, normally it's an attorney. Now, it used to be like that for decades, up until maybe I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, where we passed a city ordinance. We voted on having 3 civilian members on the panel. So you have an option to do either or. Why? Because they felt like, oh my God, civilians are very flexible and they're very lenient. So they're not going to be, firing or determining termination when they hear this entire matter before them. So just think of it like a trial. And my job in internal affairs was to put on this case. My lieutenant told me, hey, Marlon, when you're here, don't think of this like a prosecutorial role. I call bullshit. I'm prosecuting cops. That's the honest truth. And when they were facing a false statement, which was like, as an advocate in internal affairs, and don't take this the wrong way, but the best bang for your buck is a false statement. Why? Because we can all agree we don't want fucking liars. If you're found guilty and you're a liar, then you know what? You gotta go. If you decide to, I don't know, take a handcuffed arrestee and put him in an examination room and just completely go and tune this dude up, guess what? You gotta go. If you decide to do things that are just not worthy of police functions, you gotta go. And so my experience came from doing about 30 of these hearings. Now, what you got to keep in mind is 30 plus of these hearings in a 4-year span, and I probably prepped for about 40 plus of them, but a lot of them settled. Anyhow, only 5 were righteous termination cases. Like they really actually were found guilty. Now, you and I both know the standard of proof is more likely than not, right? Preponderance. Preponderance is 51% cases. Now, mind you, 5 of those. But you got to ask yourself, okay, Marlon, whatever happened to all those other 25? Well, that's part of the problem is, why is it even here at this level? And so you always wonder, why is it that we're sitting here? And captains will tell you this. We conclude a hearing and we're in the room all alone. And the first thing they'll say is, hey, Marlon, you know what? Anybody think about settling this? Why did we waste 3 days, 4 days of hearings, listening to all this testimony from the witnesses, examining all this evidence that you introduced, just to get what? Okay, they neglected their duty or they violated a policy. Maybe someone should have just gave them a suspension and called it a day. But why is it even at this level? And so I started realizing that the quality of the investigations is what lacked. It's what I would call sometimes half-baked. It's just, they're horrible, And here's the problem. As an advocate in this position in internal affairs, you can't go back to the IO and say, hey, you need to do A, B, and C because this is kind of like, this is just shitty, man. There's a lot of holes in this investigation. So I always felt like, you know what, maybe we should be conducting some really good investigations. So now, as we speak, I am a law enforcement instructor for Savage Training Group, and I teach a 3-day basic internal affairs certification course. And one thing that is my mantra that we speak a lot about is no stone goes unturned. And that is so, so true. Look, if you're going to get in this kind of business, and it's just not as an IA investigator, it's just an investigator across, no matter what function you're investigating, you know what? Turn every single stone and don't cut corners. Now, especially when it comes to your peers, like you're investigating your own policing the police, your game better be fucking tight. And so I always felt like we just didn't really do that good. And so my experience came from, I don't know, man, I got to call bullshit. And I really always felt, which is one of many reasons to do the IA Guy podcast, the police podcast, is to have these conversations, whether my guest is an IO, whether my guest is an adjudicator, a captain, commander, deputy chief, to tell us about, hey, talk to us about this adjudication process. What factors do you look into when you're making a determination of penalty? Or an accused. Hey, you know what, Marlon? Let me tell you what happened when I was a young cop, man. I took a 10-day suspension for this. And you know what? I learned a lot from it. So whoever's watching and listening, pay attention because this can happen to you. So it's been great, man. I've had 100 plus guests. Of course, you're going to come on the show and not see this messy background, if you will. But what I will say, and this is something that you and I talked about, Sal, is the common theme of amongst the 100 plus guests has been, you know what, Marlon? The punishment is not the penalty. The punishment is the process. It's the way I was treated. It's the things that they actually told me or just completely disassociated myself amongst all my peers. And at times I was actually ostracized by all this, you know? And so that, my friend, it's 2025. That negative stigma of internal affairs being the rat squad, we're evil and we're this, and that shit's got to change. So if I can do anything to get people to understand that, you know what, IA is not exactly what you think it is. But yeah, there is some self-serving people and an LAPD in that process. And I'm sorry to kind of divert a little bit. Is there is 6 levels of review. Unfortunately, there's a captain. There's 2 captains at what you call your precinct, is what we call our division, that have to review and analyze and examine alleged misconduct. Then you have the bureau, which is a deputy chief and a commander. And then there's a deputy chief and a commander in internal affairs. And guess what? They got to go and settle to the chief. So essentially, there's like 7 hands in the cookie jar. I always say this to make a determination on a internal affairs complaint investigation when it comes to adjudication. Now, you would think there's concurrence amongst the levels.
Yeah.
No, bro. I've seen cases start at, you know what, Marlon? This is paper penalty. Give them an official reprimand and call it a day. And then next thing you know, it ends up at a board of rights facing termination. What? Or things that have been at termination. Bro, I had a case once where, and we have a settlement unit in internal affairs. We actually have 2 sergeants, and their sole job is to come to us, advocates, and say, hey, Marlon, are you thinking about settling this? We can settle this if you like. I know you want to put on the hearing, but we can settle it. Let me tell you how this machine, and again, I'm being very critical, but the machine is kind of jacked up, where the attorney for the accused employee actually goes to the settlement unit and says, hey, Sal, my client will take a 22-day suspension, which is like the threshold, which is a month, right? A month worth of suspension days. And you're like, no, I'm sorry. The command staff officers, deputy chief, and the commanders say, no, we don't want to settle. So send it to the board. Okay. So we go to a board, and guess what, bro? They walk out with a 5-day suspension.
This is starting to sound like the New York City Police Department with a lot of games. Yeah. They play a lot of games. You and I can
agree, and I watch you all the time, and I talk to Eric all the time, and I've talked to John. What I've realized is that these people, if you will, if that's what we want to call them,
the arbiters,
are so self-serving. They get together and they just decide to make the decisions on their own, and they truly forget about the integrity of this whole system. Who gives a shit if it's, Sal or if it's Marlon, if I'm liked, if I'm not liked? Oh, dude, we used to work fucking patrol. Fuck that, dude. You know what? Give him a 5-day suspension. The conversations happen, and you know what? We don't know about it. Now, with that being said, NYPD and LAPD are huge, huge organizations. There's thousands and thousands of us. Now, you get into an IA and you take maybe a good hit, chances are that precinct's not going to know anything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
someone from a whole other side of the state of New York is not going to know Sal Greco or Marlon Marrache. Same with LAPD. But what stands out the most, and I do this a lot when I teach up and down Northern California, when you have small agencies, stand by, dude. Everybody knows. And everybody feels when you get an IA that you've committed this, dude, you're
Criminal
like a
acts.
murder suspect, bro. It's like you're
You,
on parole, bro.
I actually heard this because I had somebody, her name was Amanda Carley. I believe she was in the Yukaha, the police department. Her case, she was treated horribly, and she's a victim. And the actual kind of almost like what we're seeing in the New York City Police Department. I mean, initially, where the person that is badgering her got rewarded and promoted. It is sick, and the entire department and the surrounding areas saw her as like a criminal for even saying one word about what was going on in this crazy.
Talk to Amanda. I want to get her on the show. We just haven't had an opportunity to come to the studio because face to face is always better. But
Yeah.
and Amanda's kind of not close, but she's kind of far. But anyways, Amanda's case is just fascinating. She didn't know anything about the Peace Officers Bill of Rights. It involved this domestic relationship with her ex, and typical with females. There's a sexuality component to it where people, you're the only female, and that's the challenging part. Is you're a female. People are sexist and they want to do this and that. I mean, how many cases? And this is so sad to say, but Amanda's case is not the first one, and it certainly is not the last one. It kind of reminds
One in
me
New
of
York City. They got one
yeah,
in New York
yeah. It kind of
City.
reminds me of and I know he's harsh. His style is a little different. Dominic Izzo.
Yes,
Uh,
Dominic. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
I went on his podcast a couple of days ago. Look, whether you like Dominic's style or not, you know what? That's not the point. The point is not whether he is bashful and harsh. It's the fact that Dom is being transparent, and Dom is bringing up. And you know what? I got to be honest, man. It's a light bulb that hit when I started watching Dom about TikTok and about social media, how we're sexualizing cops, and it's not us who are doing it. It's them themselves. And again, the reason why females stand out the most in police officers is because they do it the most. There's some dudes that are out there doing the same shit, but not to the extent or the volume of female officers. And he makes a great point about, you know what? Look, if this is what you're going to do, then are you really in it to do essential police job functions?
Yeah, and I tell you what it is really, because you mentioned TikTok and I have my whole, the entire expose that I've started with the New York City Police Department started with one thing. A lot of these people that are in the New York City Police Department who should be worried about public safety doing their job are super, super self-impressed. Why? They have to take pictures of where they are in uniform or off duty where you already know there's so much scrutiny. You're going to have actual real dirtbag criminals out there searching your name online as an officer to see if they can find anything that you do is wrong. And they're so self-impressed. And here they were taking pictures and videos with this mob associate, this self-admitted criminal that the police department has no business hanging around in a place that was owned by the police commissioner's brother, where everything you're about to hear and you're hearing about the New York City Police Department scandal, this is one of the main hubs where it revolves around. So how did we find out about it? Self-impressed cops can't stop. Oh, selfie stick, take the picture. It's all over the place. I didn't just see it. All of America, all of the world saw it because they just can't stop being self-impressed. And you saying to yourself, Marlon, you remember back in the day, even criminals, there's mob figures like Carlo Gambino, who was the head of one of the most brutalist crime families of all time in America. No one ever saw the guy. Nobody knew the guy. Nobody knows what he did. Today's world is the opposite. They almost want to be in front of the Cosmopolitan or the Rolling Stone magazine. And you got like, What's going on? And Eric Adams fits that mold. And you're like, what world am I living in? And we're two cops looking at it the same way because when we were on the job, that's what we did. I would scour for criminals and see what they're up to because their profiles usually online doing the same thing. They're self-impressed. Now it's the actual cops. And Marlon, I could tell you there was a whole policy, New York City Police Department, that said, don't post anything online. Don't disgrace the job. Don't put yourself in uniform. And now it's the complete opposite. So I also want to get to one other thing, because we never even discussed this. For anyone who's a non-law enforcement officer or non-law enforcement person watching this. So we have a rank structure, New York City Police Department, and we go from I'm going to go from the bottom up. Police officer and detective are the same, but you get promoted to different grades as a detective. Then you get promoted, take a test to be sergeant, take a test to be a lieutenant, then you take a test to be a captain. From there on, it's all discretionary. So you become deputy chief, assistant chief, bureau chief. If you make it this far, he's a 3-star chief. There's chief of patrol, chief of personnel, chief of traffic, and then ultimately the chief of department's the highest ranking uniform member of the service. He's got 4 stars, or she had 4 stars. Commissioners, which would be a deputy commissioner, and then eventually the police commissioner, or the deputy commissioner, first deputy commissioner, and police commissioner, they're appointed. Usually the police commissioner can appoint who they want, or we're seeing that this mayor appoints who he wants. So that's the structure of the New York City Police Department. I don't know if you could give us the structure of the LA Police Department so people can understand how that works.
So basically, you're on probation as a police officer, and you can be what they call a police officer 2. Then you have a police officer 3, which is your FTO, corporal, field training officer. However, there's other police officer 3 spots as well. There's a whole bunch for me to name. With that being said, you have Sergeant 1. When you first make sergeant, you're out in patrol, and then you're going to get your rocker, right? Your your sergeant, which is a sergeant 2. That's a 5.5% increase. So we kind of consider like a promotion, but it's a coveted spot for the most part. Assistant watch commanders, working internal affairs, working as a commander's aide.
Special assignment.
Special assignments, exactly.
That's what we have too.
And then you can divert right after police. When you're a police officer too, just a cop, you can be a detective and go detective 1, detective 2, and detective 3. A D2 is a supervisor. A D3, you're a supervisor in charge of a whole section. And whether you're a detective or a sergeant, you can promote to lieutenant. So then you have lieutenant 1, and then you have the upgrade lieutenant 2. And then after that, you in the LAPD, I always said this, is that you can kind of hide out and be a lieutenant and not be bothered by command staff. However, that's when you got to jump on a coattail. So you got to jump on a coattail and to become a captain 1. Yeah, you got to be sponsored. So once you make captain, that's it, bro. You are sold. You belong to that fraternity. And you know what? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. It just all depends. Now, of course, as a captain, just to kind of give you an idea, there's close to 100 captains in LAPD.
Oh my
which
God.
means that you can be in a camp that's within the inner circle or be in a camp that's without the inner circle. And of course, from captain, you got captain 2, captain 3, and then boom, you promote to commander. After commander, you have deputy chief. After deputy chief, you have an assistant chief, and there's only 4 assistant chief spots in the LAPD. And last but not least, it's all the way to the top, which will be chief.
That's the chief. And of course, your police commissioner is also appointed from the mayor appoints the police commissioner.
That's correct. They appoint 5. So it's a panel of 5.
A
5
panel
police
of 5.
commissioners. Yep.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's slightly different. And now they go back to the discipline part. So the New York City Police Department, Internal Affairs, does investigate things and is broken into groups. So there's a group 1, group 2, group 3. They give them different names. Group 1 is supposed to investigate executive staff, captains and above. Of course, we're learning now that never happens because they're all partying together. But so Internal Affairs, when they grab a case, And let's say they were to give you what's called charges and specs, which is the trial room. That's kind of what you were describing in the LAPD version of it, what you had to do as an advocate. There is an advocate's office, and this advocate's office will then put on in the trial room, which is an administrative part, which is the true head of the trial room is first deputy commissioner, and then ultimately the police commissioner. But again, doing all these things, you need all the approval. So if you're a cop, a sergeant will do it. If you're a sergeant, the lieutenant would do it. But a sergeant and lieutenant, then captain, are all part of this group in internal affairs. So now they're going to have to get a case and bring it to one of the advocates, which is a civilian, a lawyer, who will put this case on when it comes time to the charges and specifications. They could charge you with anything, like criminal association seems to be the big one. But so something like this would be put on. The advocate has to put it on, but the advocate is a civilian. The sergeant or the lieutenant, whoever puts on this investigation and does all the work and does, basically treats it like almost like a criminal case. Like they have witnesses, they have video, whatever it is that, they present this as a witness, not as the person trying the case. I think you were saying so they skipped the civilian part and making you.
I was a prosecuting attorney.
That's crazy because so you're doing all the dirty work when you shouldn't even be doing that. But again, when this is over, it goes to a trial commissioner, not a judge. It's a trial commissioner. There's an assistant trial commissioner and a deputy trial commissioner. Ultimately, the first deputy commissioner must sign off on whatever this trial commissioner says. They're guilty of these 4 things. There's 5 things. And then the police commissioner has the final say in the NYPD. That person, the police commissioner could say, I don't agree with any of this stuff. Or, you know what? 20 vacation days should be 5. Or just, destroy this person, terminate them. So it sounds completely political in the NYPD because it is. So is it kind of, what's the structure with you? Because it sounds like you were the advocate, even though you're not a civilian. It's kind of like, what's going on? You're acting like a lawyer.
Yeah, I'm acting like a lawyer. That's it. That's the best way to describe it. What I will tell you, Sal, in my experience is that, and here's the deal. Everybody praises and like puts defense attorneys on a pedestal. Hey, you know what? So what, bro? Just because they're an attorney doesn't mean they're like great. I mean, I've seen some really bad attorneys. You can agree. Hey, I went to law school and I wanted to be a police attorney, and one day I will. But my point is that, I mean, I'm going to do it. But then again, I come with, a lot of experience. And I can tell you here in the state of California, I can probably name in my hand how many police actual attorneys there is, meaning you were a police officer, then you became a licensed attorney. But my point is that everybody praises that these attorneys and these hearings are like, oh my God, they're all this great. And then what happens is you got these captains, these young captains that just got promoted by the chief, and they're looking at the advocate as a sergeant going, well, that's just Marlon. Hey, what does he know about all these processes? So they tend to lean and be biased and get influenced by the attorney. Objection, misstating facts. And they're like, okay, objection. Hold on a sec. You know what? Overruled. Go ahead. Bring in that document so we can examine. So what ends up happening is that there's this intimidating factor, not all the time, if you will, but you really got to know your shit, man. It's wild, bro. It's wild.
So it's almost like in the NYPD, it's political. Things could be very political in these cases because you're being left high and dry because you're prosecuting people and then they're disregarding what you're saying. And at some points they're skipping over you because they have it out for that cop. See, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the whole system's flawed.
And you know what, Sal, in my experience, I never actually thought until I started reflecting just lately, like, you know what? Did they really make up their minds before I even started my opening arguments? And it's the same thing. It's opening arguments. Well, let me back up. They plead, right? Of course, sometimes they plead not guilty. For the most part, they plead not guilty. And then there's opening arguments. Then it's the case in chief. I bring in witnesses. I introduce evidence, and I rest. Now the defense has to put on their case. But I always thought to myself, you know what? Even before I started, we're good to go. I mean, no one really knows about this. And so, but I thought to myself, maybe sometimes ex parte, maybe they knew. Maybe they knew about the case before I even started. And maybe they were checked out and they already had a predetermined mind like, nah, we're going to fire this guy. Or this is a bunch of bullshit. But what I can tell you is that from my experience is with sworn command staff officers in the panel, you're talking about 40, 50, even sometimes 60 years of experience combined. The department is lenient, is flexible when it comes to anything that's related on duty. So what I'm saying is that if there's any on duty related functions in this matter that's being presented before the board, chances are they're going to be pretty lenient and flexible. It's the off-duty incidents that become the scope, just gets real narrow. And now you're going to, they're paying attention, dude. You do some stupid shit off-duty. You go to a bar, get into a fight, start dropping N-bombs, MFing, the police, just talking all that shit, and it's all on body-worn video. Criminal charges get presented to the DA's office. They rejected. Now it's the admin. Chances are that one incident, it's an unbecoming conduct an officer. Chances are you probably didn't get fired, bro, because that's not the reflection that we want in our police force. So it just all depends. So I just want to make sure we understand that it's the off duty that gets you in trouble, man. Always. What's that saying? Booze and chicks, man. Booze and boobs, man, will always get you in trouble.
Not if you're an executive in the New York City Police Department, apparently. But I'll tell you this.
You know what? You're right. I think I saw one of yours. You can go to a nightclub and get all. You can go to. I thought about this. Was it Hungary? Why would a New York mayor want to go to a trip to Hungary? I'm thinking, what's the connection between the city of New York and the country of Hungary? I have absolutely no clue. I don't know.
Remember, the mayor also has a NYPD security staff that has to follow him everywhere, even if he went out of state. They got to get permission.
You guys come along, of course.
Yeah, so it's you're putting all these other people in jeopardy. So one
of the detail. I'm sure one of the wives of the detail is going, honey, what are you talking about? You're going to Hungary? What does Hungary have to do with New York?
What does that have to do with the police department? And by the way, taxpayers are funding this whole thing.
My point.
They don't say it's not true.
And I'm being sarcastic here, but I can think, and I've been around 25 years, and I've seen it all. I've heard it all and seen it all. I just can't muster in my mind what nexus or connection does the New York Police Department have with a country that many people don't even know where it's actually located. I just don't know.
Yeah. Everyone's asking the same questions, especially in New York City taxpayer. But I have one final question with this discipline stuff. Now,
yes, sir.
Let's say an executive, one of these chiefs, is accused of, I don't know, misusing overtime by letting a subordinate do overtime, or, I don't know, pay for play stuff, promotions for cash. And so would you be able to try this case, or does it then become an internal nightmare where it's all political? Because, of course, this chief has all kinds of power, especially over those in his own office or her office, and people like you that technically internal affairs answers to these other chiefs, because you said there's 6 other ways to get up. You have all these different levels. How does this work?
Well, you know what? We're heading in the right direction for that quote unquote "do as I say, not as I do." That is 100% spot on when it comes to what we consider the double standard. Right? We talk about that a lot. I in the beginning of my podcast, when I brought in command staff officers from LAPD specifically, I kind of hesitated to ask, but they're retired, and like my mentor who retires as a commander didn't hesitate. I asked him, and he's a man of God. He did 32 years, solid leader. And he goes, go ahead and ask me. When we met, he's like, yeah, hey man, quit throwing me all these softballs. Throw me a hard one. Throw me a hard question. I said, okay, is there a double standard to your point? He said, ooh. So if a command staff officer gets a DUI and a young rookie police officer gets a DUI, chances are one gets swept under the rug and the other dude gets suspension. Yeah, he gets
corruption.
suspension. And then there's that unwritten 5-year rule. Hey, you know what? Just wait about 5-something years and you'll be okay to promote. But as a command staff officer, and it's happened, look, the answer to the question, is there a double standard? The answer will always be yes, across the nation. But we need to talk about it. Now, with that being said, even if the answer is yes, we also have to know that if you're a young captain in any department, you just promoted to captain, and you got a DUI or you did something off duty that's just so unbecoming and negative reflection on the eyes of all stakeholders, chances are your career's bought and sold. You're done. You're done. So I get it. Maybe you won't. Maybe that person might get that captain might get a 2-day suspension, and then maybe that young officer, for the same similar circumstances, might get a 15-day suspension. You know what? Don't me personally, don't argue that, because the captain, that young captain, his career's bought and sold. Now, that is a very rare occasion. While I was an advocate in internal affairs in my 4+ years there, I've only saw about maybe 2 cases that ended up where the accused employee was a command staff officer. And one of them did go. The hearing went through, and I believe the allegations were guilty. He was found guilty, and he took a 2-day suspension. Of course, his career is done. But then the other one, for whatever reason, they did not allow him his due process, and they just flat out demoted him. And so it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier, where it gets personal, dude. It's all self-serving. Yeah. If you're the chief, and I'm sure, and you've made it very, very clear, and I love your content. I love the voice and the lens that you have, where it's just not fair, man. You take care of your own, And look, I don't want to be, and I might be, listen, I might be a hypocrite when it comes to this topic, because let's just say you and I are tight. We grew up together. We went to the academy together, Sal and Marlon, and you made it to the top, bro. You're one of the assistant chiefs, and I get a DUI, or I do some shady ass shit and cut corners. I get an IA on me. Well, you and I are boys, bro. I mean, went to the academy together. You were the best man at my wedding. You might say, hey, Marlon, you know what? Don't sweat it, bro. I'll take care of you. I might be the one, and again, I've never been in this position, obviously, or this predicament, but I might say, you know what, Sal? No, fuck that. You be fair, because I don't want the troops to look at this as if you're favoring me. That probably would be, but I can't answer that question because I'm not in that predicament. Now, does anybody, or I might say, hey, bro, thanks. You know what I'm saying? Which the majority of people are probably going to say, thank you for hooking me up. And that's the shitty part, is that we need to start holding accountability on our own friends and peers and our colleagues. I don't care if you guys were at the wedding together. I don't care if you guys were academy graduates. Just you got to look at Marlon. You got to look him right in the eye, and Sal at Marlon, and say, "Hey, Marlon, you know what? Sorry, bro, but I have to do this. I can't favor you."
I advocate accountability all the way to the top. That means even the commissioner, the police commissioner, and especially the mayor and his staff. Because how is it that you're going to smash some low cop on the totem pole who 100%. Can only do what you guys tell him to do up top?
100%.
And here you guys up top are literally committing felonies left and right, and nobody's saying anything. And by the way this is done, that's why I asked this for a reason. I don't think you could even bring a case as the advocate, because you're a sergeant and that guy's a deputy. Who could bring that case? It has to be someone of the lower rank, but like underneath that. So a deputy, what? Correct. A chief, a commander? Who? How does that even work? No one's even thought about that. They don't even discuss that. Don't bring this. Don't talk
You know
about
what?
that, sir.
The cases that have been before internal affairs when it involves command staff officers had to have been off-duty DUIs. Like, shit that's out there, man. I mean, hey, bro, you get pulled over and they start, you start doing a SFST, right? A field sobriety test on you,
Yep.
and they find out, well, you know what? I'm an LAPD captain. Too fucking late, man. Everybody's going to know about it. So it's kind of like the department says, oh, shit. Case in point, I just talked to a really good dude. He runs the Instagram page called Heroed Out. I come to find out that he's from Florida, from the wonderful state of Florida, I should say.
Yep. Yep.
And it's Volusia County Sheriff's Office. And apparently there was this homicide detective who, for whatever reason, got transferred to the courthouse, but he had an unmarked vehicle, and he was picking up prostitutes. And yeah, you know what? Sad as that sounds, it's not the last time this is going to happen, and certainly this wasn't the first time. And so what ends up happening is that he gets a hold of a CAD printout of an incident, and it's basically him asking a prostitute for favors, sexual favors, and she flat out denied him. So what does she do? She calls 911 and tells this whole story. So that's where the CAD comments, and dude, he had it. He got a hold of it. He puts it out on social media. And next thing you know, he's got FBI knocking on his door saying, hey, you're not in trouble. We just want to know where you got it from. He's like, you know what? You can go pound sand. And so he did. Shut the door on go pound sand. What ends up happening is that the sergeant responsible for this CAD document that made it public, he actually came forward and was honest and forthright and said, yeah, I pretty much got this, and I gave it to, a couple of people. And that sergeant took I want to say a 10-day suspension. But what ends up happening, the bigger picture of all this, and why I bring this up, is that the actual sheriff is like, oh shit, now I have to have a press conference and I have to let the public know where we stand. Really, Sheriff? How about, when did you even know, or did you have any knowledge prior to this? And that's what is the big question mark. And so it's things like that. You want transparency, and here we got it. And I'd be the first one to tell you, Sal, for everything that you've gone through and everything that you are doing, transparency, especially in the state of New York, bro, it's barely even at 50%. I'm probably going to say, wait, maybe 10% of that. But if we are going to preach transparency and we are going to change the culture, right, of law enforcement, especially when it comes to internal affair, disciplinary issues, let's be transparent. Let's get it out there. Yes, I did fuck up and I did do something wrong, and I'm learning and I'm paying for it, But hey, man, like I keep saying, there is over 18,000 agencies. There's about close to 1 million sworn police officers throughout the nation, and we have a lot of work ahead of us, bro.
Listen, I'm there with you. That's where we're together in this. We have the same thought process where we need accountability and transparency, because remember, we're also beholden as public servants to taxpayers. I'm a taxpayer too, so I want transparency out of my police department here in Florida. If I'm in New York City, I know I have a ton of people messaging me that are up, that they just can't believe what's going on, and they're paying for this. We have the mayor and all his underlings and the upper echelon of police department are mired in sexual misconduct. Like, they have all these different lawsuits, and guess what? They are somehow circumventing a law that's in a general municipal law that states that they cannot have representation from the city corporation council without giving a reason to the public why. Because, again, sexual misconduct is not part of anybody's scope of duties, whether you're a cop or work for the city. Yet, in this administration, there's a slew of lawsuits where corporation counsel is representing these people, whether you're a chief, whether you're a special advisor for Eric Adams, a former cop. How is this going on? And they keep coming to me and saying, why are we paying for this, Sal? Please, don't stop putting your foot on the pedal on this, because They don't want to pay. This is costing the city $500,000, $1 million. It's going to go up and up and up. How is this possible, Marlon? This continues. They're representing crooked cops that are involved in sexual misconduct cases and political appointees from the mayor and himself, the mayor. In these cases, that's illegal. They should have their own representation. Isn't that how it's supposed to go, Marlon? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I think that's the law.
Yeah. I agree. Anything, you know what? Come out of pocket, man. Look, if you are jammed up and you really want to, if you really truly believe that all these lawsuits that are happening against the upper echelon, like you said, you know what? If you truly believe that there is no merit to these lawsuits, then come out of pocket and represent yourself instead of hiding, instead of concealing and being deceitful. That's the way I see it. And the only way that we can combat all this is by having you, by having John, and by having Eric continue to do the things that you do. And I praise you. And I met a group of friends that are just are solid, and all of you come with good reputation. So it's not, and again, even if you had a bad reputation, it doesn't matter. You learn from it. You know, there's a lot of podcasters that I've met, not a lot, but a couple where, hey, you know what? Yeah, I got terminated, or this is what happened, you know. But that doesn't tarnish your message, doesn't tarnish your position. As long as you're truthful and honest and transparent with yourself about what happened, then I guess you're okay. But what you're trying to do, we just keep doing it. And you know what? Now that you got the West Coast behind you, we'll combat this all together, man. What I find hilarious that I've never heard in my entire time in discipline is when Eric and John told me that they have NYPD officers. You probably have this too, where they actually listen to your podcast while they're on duty. And there was a gag order. It's fucking phenomenal. There's a gag order that says, you know what? Don't listen to those guys, you know, or else you're going to get in trouble. We're going to jam you up.
Marlon, they were calling people in. They call people in for this stuff.
And then Eric and John turned around and thought to themselves, especially John, because John worked internal affairs. They have to actually file an internal affairs complaint against your own department. And it just blows my mind. It's all, you know what I think about? I'm thinking to myself, okay, hold on a second. So you're saying that I can't listen to Sal Greco Show and the New York's Finest Police podcast. Hold on a second. So I can't do, but I can't listen to the IA guy, or I can listen to Dom. No. Oh, hold on a second. So why not these particular guys? But are you saying that I just can't, while I'm on duty, having my lunch break, or I'm clear, there's no radio, I can't listen to any podcasters? Is that what you're telling me, sir? I mean, come on.
No, they're gotten personal
crazy attack, bro. So hang in there, and I'm here for you.
And I want to tell you, so now this is some of the latest that's going on. I was going to put this on the screen for you and for the audience. So I'm going to break this down before I put this up. So first of all, there's strong, and I'm talking about strong allegations that the New York City Police Department, the fraternal organizations that hover around it, are involved in a pay-for-play scheme. What this entails is someone or leaders or people involved in the fraternal organizations were taking in upwards of $10,000 to $20,000, giving it as a kickback or kick up to the police commissioner, to Eric Adams in his own campaigns and his legal defense in order to get promoted. They also apparently were, I believe, paying in watches and also paying for trips. Because as you know, these gentlemen around Eric Adams and First Deputy Commissioner Tanya Kinsella herself, they were flying around the world and they never truly explained who paid for this trip because it's a taxpayer-funded trip. So now that we set the table here, so the fraternal organizations are being looked at by the Southern District of New York and the FBI. It's almost a well-known fact here because it's all over the place. And one of these allegations also was picked up these envelopes from the nightclub Con Sofrito, which is now doesn't exist anymore, but that's the place that was owned by the former police commissioner's brother, and how they were some of the promotions came in. You showed up there, you dropped it off. Hey, there's that mob associate. These are the allegations you hear. So then, just the other night, Eric Adams, who is mired in controversy, indicted. There's superseding indictments coming. The police department has a pay-for-play scandal, quid pro quo scandal with overtime. And here he is showing up to a fraternal organization. And mind you, he would fall under this category, which we'll also explain. I got to put this up and get your take. NYC Mayor Eric Adams attended another fraternal organization party last night, as there are allegations numerous fraternal organizations are being investigated for pay-for-play cash contributions to Eric Adams' campaign and to NYPD executives for promotion in the NYPD by the SDNY and the FBI. Now, here's a poster, the holiday gala, right? Marlon, like, on this poster, yeah, you give awards, that's fine. There's no mention of Eric Adams, right? Now, there's Eric Adams at this gala, under scrutiny, under fire for stuff. And then there's more. That's him, right? Is that not him? Is he not sitting there at this thing eating? We don't know who's paying for this, why he's there. Now, I understand you could do political things, but Marlon, would you consider this, why would you, as the mayor, under scrutiny, right? You're under a house that's collapsing in front of you. Do you think it's advisable for you as the mayor to go to some place that they're already looking and saying all these things in his allegation? What does this look like to you?
Well, you know what? His inner circle, bro, his bros, his buddies are not giving him good advice.
That's, I think.
Or we can say, or someone said, hey, mayor, it's best if it's not a good look. Don't attend this. And, it
I don't know what to say.
Yeah, but then again, you know what? Hey, bro, it goes like anything else. It's self-serving, dude. We have such big egos. I have never met, and I love. Look, I have a couple of classmates who are command staff officers from my class. 798. Those are my boys, man. I mean, through thick and thin, my boys and and girls, females too, go at it. But their heart is in the right place. And they're not so self-serving. So what ends up happening is as you go up the chain and start promoting, you tend to get far away from patrol and from the ones that are putting their lives on the line for the most part, right? And so what ends up happening is you get a big ego, man. Some really have that power and authority, bro, with that badge and that title. Some people just love it. And I'd be the first one to tell you, when I was a young cat, I love titles. I came from the Navy. I was in the Navy before I came on to LAPD. I took a job my last year. So I retired in July of 2022 with 24 years with the LAPD. I applied for a police lieutenant spot at this California State University, at campus policing, very small department. And it's second to command to the chief. And 7 months went by without hearing a word. And they call me, asking me to, hey, we did a screen down and you made, top 5. We want to schedule you for your interview. I flat out said, I don't want this. With all due respect, I want to withdraw from the process. But they convinced me, and I had an ego too. What man doesn't have an ego? Sometimes you're just going to have to learn how to maneuver that and how to cope and learn how to navigate your ego. And the person on the phone told me, hey, whoever gets the spot as a police lieutenant is going to end up being the chief of police because the chief is retiring within a year. And so that kind of like, oh, I get a chance to be a chief, give all that leadership, everything that I learned in LAPD. But it didn't work out that way. And I was driving an hour and a half. My commute was an hour and a half on the way home. And I thought to myself, you know what? do I really want to do this? I'm in my mid 50s. What? I'm going to be in my 60s just because I want to make chief. And the point I'm trying to raise is that, you know what? I let my ego get the best of me because I shouldn't have to take a job just because I wanted that title. And so I quit. I resigned after 1 year. Is when I said, you know what? I'm out. I'm out of here. And that's when I started the podcast. And I got to tell you, the podcast has no title. It has no ego because it's not about me. It's about the topic of discipline. It's about the topic of police. And it's about the topic of the ones who run these departments that make it to be themselves. Like it's all about you. And we shouldn't be doing that because the more you make it self-serving, the more shit gets fucked up, bro. Excuse my language. But and you know this better than I do. You know that better than I do because and we're going to talk about that in our podcast where you had this association with a known felon, and it just blows my mind because there's not one department or a policy that I have read that has some specificity as it relates to what you went through with the NYPD, bro.
Oh, I'm about to show you something else. Right here in the same post we mentioned about Eric Adams and going to the fraternal organizations. You see this? It's also prohibited conduct for NYPD officers to associate with someone reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely to have engaged in criminal activity, especially during off-duty hours. Eric Adams certainly fits that criteria. Is anyone going to be investigated at NYPD Police Commissioner Tisch, right? So here's the list of prohibited conduct, right? And you can see it says engaging conduct, in good order, all this good stuff that they always try to hit you with.
Which one sticks out the most? Well, let me ask you this. I'm putting my
Right
hat
there.
on there. I was going to ask you what out of this policy is a direct connection with the conduct of Eric Adams.
So Eric Adams right here said, knowingly associate with person or organization, A, advocating hatred, oppression, or prejudice based on race, religion, gender, gender identity, expression, sexual orientation, disability. That's not going to be him. Disseminating defamatory material. I don't know about that. That the person knows or has reason to know is engaged in or is likely to engage in criminal activities or has previously engaged in criminal activities and or preventing or interfering with performance of police duties. Now, Marlon.
C. So you're looking at 8C?
Yes. Marlon.
Okay.
That C, he is under indictment and they're going to have a superseding indictment. And unless the cops are associating with him under his official capacity as mayor, which this was not on the calendar. I'm just trying to point out how disgraceful this policy is. And right here, there's also investigation. So they have a way to get out of it. Oh, look. So it says investigations to allegations of criminal association shall take into account the totality of circumstances. So the type of crime, the current rehabilitation status of associated person. That's ridiculous. Relationship between member of the service. This is crazy. Right? It's crazy.
Hey man, out of all the hearings that I've done, this is a slam dunk for me. 8C is perfect. All I got to do is introduce 8C, and whoever the judge or the hearing officer or whoever that magistrate might be says, well, okay, what about 8C? What you going to explain to us? Well, the accused employee is under an indictment right now. And so, and which, by the way, Your Honor, and members of the jury, he has been an indictment. And you know what? We can talk about that indictment, but I don't want to waste your time about something that's been publicized everywhere. However, he was indicted not too long ago for being involved in criminal activity, and 8C specifically depicts that a person cannot attend any functions while they're actually engaged in any criminal activity, which this happens to be the case. Therefore, you're going to find this person guilty, and I submit that to you, and give them hell, dude. Hey, man, that policy alone, to me, it's not just a policy. And this is interesting you bring that up because sometimes we don't want to do what they call stacking. It's a term that we use in internal affairs where you'll find a policy violation, but that they also fail, neglected duties, what we call it, NOD, right? So you'll have an NOD, but that NOD also actually touches the policy because you kind of violated policy because you failed and you neglected to do this.
Yeah.
Don't stack them. Like if you have like 10 incidents, don't stack every single allegation. However, there is exceptions to the rule, and this happens to be an exception. Look, you have a policy violation, but that violation is so egregious and it reflects so negative on the eyes of all stakeholders, the public, right? The community being number one, that the accused employee is a mayor who has been indicted. So therefore, it's not just a policy. We can also add an allegation of unbecoming conduct. That conduct is so unbecoming because guess what? The average, not even the average, the reasonable, right, professional with integrity wouldn't attend. Like if I was under indictment, you know, and here's the catch-all. I guarantee you that if you show that to Eric Adams or his staff, they're probably not even know that that actual policy even existed.
I tell you what, Marlon, it was actually altered. That whole rehabilitated stuff wasn't there when they terminated me. So seems like they're doing it about face and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Marlon, this has been a great time. Thank you for breaking this down. You could tell, I mean, this prohibited conduct, we could go on forever. I just want to show how this is right now being used and nobody's in trouble. Because remember, the mayor's official capacity when he's on, doing something versus now he's just showing up to this thing and he's sitting down eating dinner and whatever he's doing. Because remember, there's a cloud around fraternal organizations right now being investigated. And here he is and his cops taking his picture. They're hanging around. Aren't you associating with a criminal? I mean, that's, and he's engaged in the act still. He's being investigated. So I just find it crazy. That's a catch-22. Marlon.
Hey, bro, you know what, Sal? It's not a good look, bro. It's no any different than a bank robber who you're kind of like, oh, we got enough evidence to fucking get an arrest warrant. But hey, I'm just going to go to Bank of America and just let everybody know that I've committed 10 bank robberies. I'm almost there, I had fun, bro. Hey, man, you and I can talk forever. I 100% appreciate your time and effort. And again, I hope your audience gets to know. I kind of feel like this is just kind of shitty, but it's okay. It's a room.
It's Marlon at home, but where can people reach you, Marlon? Where can people find you?
You know what? Definitely the channel, the IA Guy. So just put IA Guy on YouTube. It'll pop up. IA Guy podcast all together in Instagram. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. Marlon Marrache, Marlon, last name Marrache, Marrache. And brother, I'll be seeing you soon on mine. And you and I are going to have such a great conversation. I am a believer that the more conversations that we have about internal affair matters, the more that we can learn, the more that we can actually put a dent and change that negative stigma that comes with IA.
That's right, Marlon. Amen to that. And with that, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. There'll be more to come, especially surrounding this entire disciplinary system that I think should be absolutely axed and destroyed because it's so outrageous and egregiously non-transparent. That's
100%. And you can invite me anytime. You can invite me anytime on your show, bro, and I'll come on and we'll have all these discussions. I'll break some stuff down with what's going on with all the upper echelon over there in the wonderful state of New York, man.
And I want this too because Marlon's showing you that the West Coast is not far off from what the hell's they're doing on the East Coast. Okay?
No, it's not.
It's not. So, and with that being said, it's been another edition of the Sal Greco Show. Thanks everyone for tuning in. God bless you all to the audience. Thank you, Marlon, for coming on. We'll see Marlon again soon. And for everybody else, have a good day.